Right, welcome back to the podcast. So, for those of you watching us, you'll see that me and Dan have got a massive upgrade on our backgrounds. Dan is on a nice sunny beach, and I've got my logo sitting behind me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the very least, it beats having my washing behind me.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm actually in Jamaica at the minute.
Hmm.
Like, this is no joke. I am in Jamaica at the minute.
Looks pretty
Um,
Jamaica.
yeah, it is. And I'm trying to top up the tan. It's not going well so far, but yeah, welcome to Jamaica, everyone.
They do call you Dan White, not Dan the Brown.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, Matt, how have you been getting on? What have you been up to this week? Give everyone an update. The crowds want to know.
So yeah, usual busy week for me with clients, online clients, face-to-face PT clients. My mom was up in Aberdeen at the weekend, so I met up
Nice.
with her, my sister, and Elda went out for dinner. So that was nice. And to be honest, man, you know what I'm like. I think most of my clients know what I'm like. I don't actually go out that often, so going out for
Mhm.
dinner is quite a rare treat for me. So it's good. And then Sunday got to meet my mate Ashley, who got to meet her baby
Mhm.
for the first time, little Emmy. So that
Yep.
was good. So yeah, it was a nice, wholesome weekend. How about you?
Nice. Not really much for me. I went to London on Saturday, which was really good. Not many people know I lived in London for 4 years. I went to school, certainly the latter end of my primary school. And yeah, I just missed it. Like it genuinely is a place that will always be in my heart. Like it's very busy. Like if you're not used to the hustle and bustle, like for example, part of the DLR was closed, so people couldn't get to Canary Wharf, so the Jubilee line was like packed. Like you were literally packed like a tin of sardines inside the London Underground. But I was used to that. Like I did that at school. I did that twice a day. I had to catch buses and trains and walk to school and then do the same on the way home. So yeah, it's an awesome place, beautiful city. I love it when it's all lit up.
I can't
We
take you
went.
seriously with the background, man. I just can't do it.
Hold on
Carry
one
on, carry on.
second. Um,
No, carry on. Just leave it. We've committed to it.
oh, so I mean, the Shard. The Shard was really good. It's something that. Oh, I'm now in San Francisco. The Shard was really good. We had dinner. It was just a really good time. And then Sunday, I didn't really do much. Got my food shopping, which I'm quite religious in doing on a Saturday now and doing my meal prep. Went for a run, and that's about it. Now here we are sitting on Tuesday.
Yeah. Have you ever been to San Fran?
No, I haven't. I've been to a fucking lot of places in America, but not San Francisco.
San Francisco is the biggest shithole I have ever been to in my life.
Wow, that's
And I've
not
been
what I expected you to say.
and I've played football all over Scotland, so I've been to a few shitholes. And
Even
yeah,
worse than Falkirk.
mate, Falkirk's all right. Falkirk is Falkirk's like paradise compared to San Francisco. Honestly, as soon as me and the guys, when we did our road trip in 2017, as soon as we got to San Francisco, I was like, what a shithole this is. Like the place just stinks. There's homeless people left, right, and center. So I didn't know before I went to San Fran that that is the home of the homeless. So basically, anyone who's on that western seaboard um, gets like taken to San Francisco if they're homeless. So the streets are just filled with homeless people begging for money, mugging people. It's just like honestly, it's just a hellhole. Like at night, it is the most hostile, like horrible place ever. And
But you've obviously never been to Bristol then, because it's the the homeless capital of the UK.
but if I could advise anyone to go to the West Coast of America, I would. I love the West Coast of America, but
Mhm.
not San Fran. I would skip out San
Mhm.
Fran or just go for a day. Don't stay very long because there is a couple of cool things like what's behind Dan, the Golden Gate.
Yeah,
Um, there's a couple of cool things to see, but in general, total shithole.
yeah.
Anyway, let's move on. So,
Yes.
topic for today is going to be the psychology of eating more. So, we're going to go into this in as much depth as we possibly can in a podcast. Northern Lights. God, this is a great podcast. Um, we're going to go into this topic as much as we can and as much detail as we can, and talk about it from a few different angles. And it's something that me and Dan talk about a lot with clients. Something that's quite prevalent in our job roles. And it's a discussion that I've had with quite a lot of clients recently. And I thought it'd be good to go into depth on a podcast on it. It's something that I would say from our demographics of people wanting to transform their bodies, transform their minds with eating, sometimes through bad relationships with food, sometimes with just the diet culture of the UK. It's something that people struggle with, and it is genuinely a difficult thing for people to do. So when we say the psychology of eating more, we're talking about classic examples of people who have been in a dieting phase. So let's take average Joe. He's lost 20 kilos in a really successful dieting phase. You can't just diet forever. I say this to clients all the time. You can't just diet forever. You can't chase a deficit forever. You don't want to be a yo-yo dieter. So what you have to do is you have to have a long-term strategy when it comes to nutrition. So what I often say to people is get the body fat off first. That's the most important thing. Let's, rejuvenate your health. Let's get the body fat off you. Let's get you in better shape. Get you lighter, whatever it is. Let's say Joe loses 20 kilos of body fat. What's next? So the next step from there, if he's happy with where his body fat is in that point, is gradually increasing calories. Now, if you say that to someone who's like never been out of shape or never been soft, never needed to diet, they're like, okay, that sounds great. What's wrong with that? The issue isn't the physical eating more. A lot of the time, the issue is the psychology behind eating more. So the issue I run into with a lot of clients is they've just went through this long dieting phase where they're chasing a deficit. They're trying to eat less calories than the body is using as an energy source so that they can burn through fat, right? So now they've got to switch that mindset into thinking, I need more food to fuel my body. Now, what happens when you eat more food? Naturally, you feel a little bit better, you have better energy levels, you're not in a calorie deficit anymore, so your weight's probably going to go up, if not stabilize, and then you're going to have to push food up again. The same thing happens, you find a set point, push food up again, and it's a very difficult process for someone who's been in the mindset of dieting, particularly when that habit and that belief system of dieting, eating less, has been embedded for years and years. I mean, how many people have we trained over the years, Dan, that have been dieting for years and years and years, never got anywhere with it, So it can be a very difficult thing to do, to get into the headspace of progressing your food up the way rather than just down the way.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic in itself, really, because I tend to work with clients, or certainly the start phase or the starting process for most of my clients that I get they are a little bit larger. They do have a little bit extra more body fat to lose. And their goal, and everyone's goal is, oh, I want a flat stomach, I want abs, blah, blah, blah. And they come to me and say things like, I've already been counting my calories down. I'm definitely having between 800 and 1200 a day because, I read it on a website somewhere, or, you'll get, and I think most of it just comes down to, that they've not actually really tracked calories properly.
Yep.
Because, when I get them to do a full week of logging food properly, making sure that MyFitnessPal is not 100% accurate. Let's just throw that out there. I don't think that's news to anyone. So if you're already not maximizing it as much as possible, it's going to be less accurate for you. For example, if you have a bowl of spaghetti bolognese in front of you and you just type in spaghetti bolognese, MyFitnessPal is a database, by the way, so anything that you add, it just gets added in. So you could literally sift through millions of people that's put in their spaghetti bolognese. Doesn't necessarily mean it's yours. So the way that we can make that a little bit more accurate is to take every single individual ingredient, weigh it out, know the amount, and put it in as a meal. And that way, 100% that is what you're having. So back to what I was saying, it's already not accurate enough. So you're already underreporting on something that isn't 100% accurate. So 1200 calories actually turns out to be 2000 plus because you're adding butters and oils and you're snacking on small little side things and you're drinking liquid calories and things like that. And it just takes a bit of a calorie awareness. That's tendency as to why we get you to track in the first place, is to just be, overall calorie aware.
Yeah.
So, but when you're starting on this journey and you have such a poor relationship with food, and I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm not even, I have countless clients that's dealt with it, and I'm sure you have as well, Matt. But when you tell me, for somebody that thinks they've had 1,200 calories a day, to go away, and as a male that weighed 116 calories, 116 kilos at the time, to go and have, 2,400, because that was what a BMR calculator, somebody had calculated a little bit more for me. That was 1,200 calories more than what I was having a day. I shit the bed. I was like, this can't be possible. I'm just going to pack on more weight, blah, 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 blah. But once I went through the step-by-step process of getting more accurate at tracking, reporting properly, being just honest, as well, with what I'm having. Like if I was cooking, and I did pick at things, you have to track them as well. You can't just have it and expect it to be like forgotten about. I also come across a lot of people as well that, and this is going to sound really bad, and I'm probably going to offend some people here, but when somebody of a large size turns around and says, I can't hack that amount of calories, it's a lie. When somebody's like, oh, but 1,800 calories is a lot. I just don't think I can eat that amount in one day. If you can smash a Domino's pizza in a 1 hour, which I know most of you can do out there, that is 2,000 plus calories sitting there. You're telling me that you can't spread out 1,800 calories within a day. So you have many of these factors to come in. And, this is just, I'm talking from my own experience. I used to be the person that was like, I couldn't handle that amount of calories in a day, but I was just lying to myself. I was lying to my coach at the time. So there's all these things you got to think about, and it is difficult, and you do have to have a mindset switch. But if you have the support and accountability from a good coach, the mindset switch should be a little bit easier.
I think as well, in terms of reframing your mind, a couple of things that I say to clients, and a couple of things that I find helps people, is reframing the thinking process from burning calories, eating less, into fueling your body. So if your goal is to build up your calories, adjust your metabolism to a higher amount of food each day, to get stronger, to put on muscle, all of these things are made easier by better and larger amounts of nutrition. So for example, if I have someone eating 100 grams of protein a day, to me, that's very low for just about anyone, right? So if you're to increase your calories gradually over the next few weeks, coming months, and then let's say at the top end of your calories, you're now at 160 grams of protein a day, your body's ability to recover with that extra nutrition, that extra protein, is so much better. Therefore, your potential to get strong, your potential to recover, your potential to grow new muscle tissue is therefore at a higher ceiling. So effectively speaking, if you want to be big and strong, if you want to grow muscle tissue, if you want to get stronger, it should always be your priority to build up your calories eventually. Getting lean first is ideal, and that's the ideal scenario. So that's one thing. If you're not in that boat whatsoever, you don't give a shit about how strong you are, you don't give a shit about how much muscle you have, it's still within your best interest to build up calories after a dieting phase. If you can build up your calories successfully and stick to it, gradually increasing, you will build up your metabolic rate, which is how many calories you burn just on a day-to-day basis without activity. You will build up that metabolic rate to a point where you're eating a lot more food without gaining any body fat. So your natural set point has been adjusted because you're consistent with nutrition. Now, the failure point that a lot of people hit with this is just consistency. So let's say an example, I've taken a female down to 1,400 calories at her lowest. She's lost a fair bit of body fat. I've initially jumped her up to, let's say, 1,700 to get her into maybe still a slight deficit, if not maybe maintenance, depending on body weight, loads of variables. But let's say 1,700 is her new calorie intake. Now, initially, because she's eating a tiny bit more, her weight might go up, let's say, half a kilo. Tiny amount, nothing much. That's just because she's eating more food. She freaks out. She's thinking, oh my God, I'm getting fat again. I'm putting on all this weight that I've worked hard to lose. Now, if she just continues on those calories, her body will probably just stay at that weight. It doesn't mean that she's gained any body fat. She's just a little bit heavier, right? Her glycogen stores are now full rather than being depleted. So she's just holding more weight. Just like if I drink a liter of water, I'm a kilo heavier. It doesn't mean that I'm fatter. It doesn't mean that I look any different. It's just that there's more inside me, And then from there, once she gets over the 1,700, once she gets over that half kilo of body weight gain, let's say we go to 1,950. this is hypothetical numbers, but let's just say this, right? Let's say we go to 1950 and then she thinks, like, okay, I'll give it a go. I'm not sure if I can eat all that, like what you said, Dan, but let's just give it a go. And then she thinks, you know what, I'm eating a lot of food now. I could just eat a bit extra. I could just have a snack here and there. I'm eating more calories anyway, trying to get strong, so I'll just eat more. So without tracking, with being a little bit lazy with nutrition, thinking she's got a lot of leeway, she's now averaging about 2.3, 2.4. She has a night out the weekend. She has like 8 drinks, a takeaway. Now all of a sudden her average intake is closer to 3,000. This happens a lot, by the way. This example definitely happens. Let's say she hops on the scales or I measure her body fat and it's up. She's like, holy shit, it's because of the calories. I'm like, no, no, no. It is not because of the calories. It is not because we increased your calorie intake by 200 a day. It's because you've been off plan. So at the end of the day, if you follow this strategy of gradually building up, not doing it too fast, you're not taking your calories up by 1,000 at a time, because yeah, duh, you will get fat. But by gradually doing it, you're letting your body adapt to a new set of circumstances, and you will not gain that much body fat. A minimal gain is probably going to be inevitable for most people. Just like in a bodybuilding off season, for myself personally, I'm going to gain body fat, but is it that important? Does everyone have to be really, really lean all the time? No. Does it affect your quality of life? Yeah, in a good way, probably. So, I find that a lot of people struggle with that point when they do go off plan. They think it's the increase of calories that's actually getting them to gain body fat. No, it's because you went and got smashed and ate loads of shit. That's why you've gained body fat. So, that's just a common pitfall I run into with clients quite a bit. And it's something that I've heard a lot over the years, and they think it's because they're eating a little bit extra food that they're jumping up in weight. No, it's because you haven't stuck to it. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Big thing for me is that, like, if you eat a couple of kilos worth of food over a day or two, what do you think is going to happen? Unless you instantly shit it out, it's going to be sitting in your body. So your weight is going to be up. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've packed on body fat. That's a really strong, you need to differentiate between the two. I think, the thing that I always see is that, first of all, people are impatient. They have to realize that this is a process, and there are steps that you need to take. You do inputs that will give you an output and result. Okay. So for example, like, I just don't feel people are patient enough. I'm going to use hypothetical numbers as well. Let's say, for example, I get, a female on, she's a little bit larger, she's looking to cut body fat and weight. And, in her first week, I get her to religiously have a range between, let's even say, 1,600 calories to 1,750, depending on her activity for the day. Sometimes when she does more activity and she's a little bit more hungry, I say have the upper end of the ceiling of the calories. If you're sitting down at your desk all day and you haven't got as much steps, have the lower end. Like, it doesn't take rocket science. It's rocket science to work that out. And in her first week, she's cut 2 kilos, 4 odd pounds or whatever that is. Straight away, she's like, good result, good first week, blah, blah, blah. We've kind of found her set point. Most of you will then go to being like, I either need to cut my calories more to get results faster, or I need to do more activity. Why not just follow that and maximize it for as long as you possibly can? Matt's not talking about consistency over a week, 2 weeks. I'm talking a minimum of 12 weeks of sticking to the same thing religiously. That's what gets you results. If you can get to the end of the 90 days and you can sit there and be like, what I have done, it worked for the first, 6 to 7 weeks, but then my results started to normalize. There was a couple of days I went off. I necessarily didn't put on weight or body fat. You can then sit and take a sort of overlook of everything and go, this worked, this didn't work. For the second phase, which is your next 90 days, I will change this. I will do this. If you've cut, 4, 5, 6 kilos in your first phase, yeah, your body will have adapted to a lower, set point. So you will have to equate for that. But you do that after a 90-day process. You look at going, okay, 1,700 calories is too much now. Maybe I do need to drop it back and have the 1,600 and maybe find a slightly lower range. And it's moving the variables small. It's not saying 1,700 to 1,000. That's stupid. That's why you get crash dieters and people that fall in and out of fads because you try and go too extreme too quickly. You know, you might have to diet down on shit calories if you want to get really low levels of body fat, but that's near the end.
Yeah.
That's not at the start of your journey. And just in the reverse of that, if you are at the low calories, like Matt saying with the girl that was at 1400, he didn't just jump her straight up to 3000. It's an incremental process, because what's going to happen? You're going to add on body fat. You're going to go back into the crash dieting because you look shit, you feel shit, you're performing shit.
Mm.
You know, like there's a reason why we do things in steps and stages, and it's to help you. It's not because we want you to get slow results. It's we want you to do it once, do it properly, and then maintenance itself. That's a whole other conversation. Maintenance is a skill itself.
Yeah.
That is a I actually think we should do a podcast on that alone, because that's a topic for a different day. But you know, I can't think of the last person that came to me and said, I am happy with my maintenance. I have mastered maintaining, and I want to stick there for the rest of my life.
Very, very rare. And if you're sitting there thinking, or you're walking, listening to us chatting, and you're thinking to yourself, I just don't want to eat more because I'm scared I get body fat, or I'm scared that my weight goes up. As much as I understand that thought process, me and Dan have both been there. I've been there post-show in the years gone by. Dan's been there after dieting phases. We've been there. We understand that mindset. It's not like we're just like some sort of like Terminator robots that don't feel things like you guys do. We've been there ourselves. We understand it. And I've been there with clients. I know that they do feel like that. And I've heard those words multiple times. One thing that might help you is we talked about how to live like an athlete, or how to become an athlete. And in that podcast, I mentioned this. This is the advice I would give you if you do think along those lines. Think about athletes. Think about athletes. What do? They probably train more than everyone else. They eat more than everyone else to accommodate that, right? So are all athletes morbidly obese? No. Most athletes, let's say track and field athletes, field sports athletes, strength athletes, hypertrophy-based athletes, they're all leaner than normal people, yet they eat way more than normal people. What's the key fundamental in that? It's the fact that they're consistent with their nutrition, right? So if you're consistent over years with your nutrition, they've earned that right because they've gradually just built up their metabolic rate over time. Yes, training very frequently helps because their calorie output is high, therefore their calorie input can be higher. But the real reason why they stay so lean is because their calorie input is consistent. So they're not giving their body this influx of binge eating loads and loads of calories at once. They're not going on holiday and getting pissed for 2 weeks in Magaluf. They're not doing these things that regular people do. They're not going off plan. And that's largely the reason why athletes look better, but at the same time stay lean, and at the same time eat more than everyone else. It's not just the fact that they train more. You know, I know bodybuilders, and I know some other athletes outside of bodybuilding who train probably less than a lot of average Joe gym goers. I mean, me myself, right now, I'm training 4 days a week, probably averaging 45 minutes to 60 minutes per session. So I spend less time in the gym than some of my clients. And that's not, I'm not saying that's better than what my clients are doing. It's a needs basis, right? It's just because I'm in my off season. But with those sort of like training sessions, yes, they're intense, but my food is very consistent, you know? And if you take any other athlete who takes it seriously, their nutrition will be consistent. So the point I'm making by using myself training 4 days a week is that I'm not training more than everyone else. That's not the reason why I eat more. I eat more because I'm consistent. And that's ultimately what it comes down to a lot of the time. If you're scared of eating more, don't be. Be scared. If you're going to be scared of anything, be scared of being inconsistent, because that's what you were before getting a coach, before getting a plan, before trying to stay on track. You were inconsistent. And in my experience, inconsistency very, very rarely leads to anything other than negative results.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that like you really do have to realize that there's levels to the game, and it's a game that you're trying to play. If you want to be one of these people that can have more calories and have a good body, like that is possible. Matt's just told you it's possible, but you need to go through the process of it first, of getting into a place where you're in shape, building back up, and then allowing your metabolism to establish a new maintenance point so that you can have a higher upper end of ceiling of calories. And then when you do have a night out or two, it doesn't affect it. It's different if you then start binge eating and smashing nights out 7 nights a week and you are having more calories, that will have an effect. But your once or twice, nights out that you have a month, you can afford to drink more. You can afford to eat a little bit more. But because you're so consistent with everything else, it's really just like a stop on a long car journey. It doesn't mean that you're gonna like stay at the hotel for a long period of time. It just is a small stop in the road. Um, people, I feel like if you are out there and you're walking, you're listening to this and whatever, like we try not to have a mass go at any particular one person, even though there's a few in my mind I can think of. Um, we're just trying to get you to take things with a more smarter approach, I think is probably the best way to say it. Because we care about you. It's the reason why we do this. Like we want you to get the best possible results in the most healthiest way. If you stop viewing food as this like super hedonic, pleasurable thing, and you associate it with enjoyment so you can socialize, because that's the culture here, but also fuel is most important, nourishment, health. Like your body has so many processes that it goes through that we don't have time to go through today, but like food counts towards it all. The reason you wake up in the morning and you feel like crap and your bones and joints are sore and your muscle, always got DOMs, and you've always got low energy, it'll be because you're poor nutrition. It won't be because, yeah, okay, sleep will have a big, facting a factor to do with it. But like I speak to most of you is, like, no, Dan, I get 8 hours sleep a night and I still feel like crap. And I'm like, okay, what's your nutrition like? And you tell me all of this, you're like, oh, I don't have time to prepare and things like that. And it's like, it's all very fine and well saying it, but if nothing changes, then nothing will change.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What I said there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, people listen to this. If you are one of these people who thinks like you struggle with eating more, or you've tried it, it's not really worked out for you, try and implement some strategies that can help you, such as thinking about fueling your body with nutrition rather than eating more to get fat. Because if you've justified it like that, you're forever going to struggle with eating more calories.
Yeah.
Another thing to do is make sure you have a plan. I think we've already said this, but I can't emphasize this enough. If you don't have a plan when it comes to eating more food, you are setting yourself up for failure before you've even begun this. Because if you don't have a plan of nutrition, you don't have a set intake to track, or you don't have a meal plan, where do you go? You don't have any measuring stick. You don't have any base point of reference. So let's say, for example, what I might do with my clients is when I take them out of a deficit phase, I'll nudge them up until their weight sort of stops moving. Once their weight is pretty much stable, I'll tell them, right, we've found your maintenance point. That is your calorie maintenance. Now what I'm going to do moving forward, if you want to, is I'm going to push you up into a calorie surplus. This is going to allow you to get stronger faster. This is going to allow you to build muscle at a better, quicker rate. And from there, moving forward, you're going to be adjusting your metabolic rate, enabling you to eat more and, basically invest in your progression within the gym.
Yeah.
The same thing goes for people who are outside the gym, who don't go to the gym whatsoever. You still want to try and progress your metabolic rate so that over time you're eating more food. And guess what? Once you've built up to the top of this point where you're eating a lot of calories, you're in a reasonably big surplus. The next time you want to trim a little bit of body fat off, it's so much easier. If you dieted on 1600, then you've spent a year getting yourself up to 2,900 calories. You can then drop that down to say 2.5, and your body will recognize that as a new calorie deficit. So before you had to go down to 1600 to get any sort of fat loss going. Now you've initiated 2,500 calories and the body's recognizing that as a deficit because you've trained your body's metabolism over a period of time to gain a faster rate of burning calories. So, with that in itself comes a much easier time of it, because as everyone knows, the more calories you can eat whilst in a dieting phase, the easier it is to adhere to that dieting phase. And the easier your adherence is, the better progress you make, the better results you have. And also, everyone likes eating food. Let's not beat around the bush. Everyone likes eating. Eating gives us enjoyment. Eating, releases serotonin, gives us endorphins when we eat nice food. So like you're not immune to that. People who say they don't enjoy food are usually lying. Everyone enjoys eating, so we want to eat as much as possible whilst gaining some sort of progress from it. And in a dieting phase, you want to diet on as much calories as you can whilst being in a deficit. So I always say when it comes to bodybuilding, the hard work is done in the off season to give yourself the runway into a prep. So what I mean by that is the more you build your calories up with consistency and pushing your food high, the more calories you can be able to diet on. Yes, at the end of a bodybuilding prep, everyone's starving, everyone's like feeling like death last few weeks. Yeah, if you're going to be in shape, you're going to feel like that. But you want to make the other 15, 16 weeks as manageable as possible and as convenient as possible for your body as well, because that's half the battle, really.
It's interesting because like I feel that like us as humans always want to put ourselves through some sort of painful regiment because it makes us sound cool or whatever. But like, no, if you can maximize 1,700 calories and still lose weight, maximize it, because it will give you that sort of leeway and bandwidth to have a little bit more food if you have an occasion. I think, if you're constantly, and I'm going off on a little bit of a side tangent here, but I was thinking about this as you were speaking here, that like if you're constantly in the cycle of doing this and you can't get it right and whatever, and you do understand the laws of the calorie deficit, which, all of you should know by now, because we bang on about it, so much, is that it's not an educational issue that you have, it's a behavioral one. You scroll through all of this posts and food swaps, and the fitness chef does really good ones where he does calorie comparisons, but none of that is going to help you if you can't stick in your deficit consistently over time. Okay, if you can't, you need to look at the behaviors, your actions, the way you do things during that time, because they're obviously not sustainable for you to adhere to your deficit over time. Things that will help you adhere to over your deficit is maybe starting on a little bit higher calories. Yes, they might be higher and it might cause a little bit of weight gain in the onset, but at least then you're sort of at the upper limit and you can start tailoring it down to get the weight drop. I just think that it's not spoken about enough is the behavioral side of things.
Yeah.
Why can't you stick to a consistent calorie deficit for 90, 180 days, 6 months, a year? You do it once, you do it properly, and you'll never have to do it again. And I think that's the underlying message that I'm kind of saying here, is that like you have a crack in the wall and you're just trying to cover it with little plasters that you'd put on your arm if you had a cut. Like it's never going to fully fill in the crack. You're only just putting a plaster over it. Why don't we fill in the crack and fix the wall for good?
Yeah, so definitely don't be scared of eating more is a massive point to take away from this. Another thing I wanted to add that I haven't mentioned yet is just a little bit more of a sciencey side of it. So we've mentioned a couple of times that you want to do some sort of dieting phase in order to start building your calories up. So part of the reason for this is to increase your insulin sensitivity. So your insulin sensitivity, you've heard us bang on about this in the podcast before, if you've listened a lot. If this is your first ever episode, in case you don't know, your insulin sensitivity will basically determine how your body handles carbohydrates and fats, right? So let's say you're very insulin sensitive, your body's ability to utilize carbohydrates and process them into glucose, use them as energy, is very, very good. You're very efficient. If your sensitivity is really, really low, then your body's ability to utilize carbohydrates is rubbish. When you drop body fat, or when you spend a large period of time in a calorie deficit, your insulin sensitivity improves. So essentially, our body is more efficient when we're lean. Okay, if you have large amounts of adipose tissue spread all around your body, you've got high body fat percentage, or you're overweight, you're really, really big, your insulin sensitivity is definitely not good, which is why it's easy to get fatter when you're fat, essentially, for lack of a better phrase. So what you want to do before you increase your food is you want to make your body as efficient as possible at utilizing energy, at utilizing these extra calories. Best way to do that, get leaner. Put yourself in a deficit, get nice and lean, and then bump the calories up. It's something that is really, really not mentioned enough, and it's something that makes a genuine difference. Not only will insulin sensitivity improve the way we utilize carbohydrates, it will elongate the process of how long you can build up calories, because once you have blunt insulin sensitivity and your body isn't utilizing carbs well, your ability to get stronger and put on muscle also reduces. So ultimately, to get that back, eventually you're going to have to go back into a dieting phase. So the longer we can avoid that, the longer we can build up your calories and not go into a dieting phase, the better. The better. You're going to enjoy it more. You're going to get higher calories at the end point. And also, you're just going to enjoy eating more food, which is, aside from training and all the other health benefits, you get enjoy eating more food, which is great. Everyone likes that.
For sure. Right. I think we've rabbited on long enough. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if anyone can take anything away from this, I'll be happy. The main thing that I want people to think after they've listened to this is don't be scared of eating more food. Eating more is usually only a positive thing.
And do it in stages. Something I want to add on, like you can even, start off as little as adding in like 100 extra calories a day, which essentially, if you think about it, is a banana, really. Nothing. Or a handful of berries. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks very much for listening.